discussion if you want. I'm not going to take up time with that now, what that means to us. But like Congressman Mass, we believe we need to hold the line at 72,000 acre feet or better in the optimization process. And I think that's the simplest, clearest, most effective message that we can have as we move forward.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right. You guys feel good to keep brief? Commissioner Matheson. And then followed by, will be Ben.
Thank you, guys. I'll try and be brief to prevent reiteration of a lot of subjects, but you know, a brief story for me. You know, before I could drive a car, but early years of high school, I could go out and play on the river. Before algae blooms, before this discussion, before Laura's 08, I remember my parents, you know, cautioning me against my arguments to go out on the river and play, to fish and play, because we had fish popping up dead with lesions in the water. Now, almost 2 decades later, I'm sitting here as the Vice Mayor of Stuart, and I can't reiterate how proud I am to know and see the advocacy over the past few years that we have on our highest level of government down to our lowest here in my hometown. Our message, City of Stuart, has been completely consistent with Congressman Mast's. That above all, we want no harm to be done to our community. I've been part of the LOSUM process since the first public scoping meetings came to town. I'm very proud and honored by my fellow commissioners for them to vote me to speak on behalf of the city during this process. I can't emphasize how important that has been, so that we don't have to coincide every decision with a city commission meeting. And I'm so grateful for the trust they've given me. But LOSUM began by trying to establish a system of performance metrics from all the different stakeholders. Water supply, lake ecology, Everglades, northern estuaries, us, and the Caloosahatchee. And with those performance metrics, the goal was to figure out balance. I can't tell you the number of emails I've written or the number of conversations I've had to express how frustrating that is. Because for us in City of Stuart, if you all know in this room, you guys know more than anyone else, balance is unobtainable for us. Balance implies, as Congressman Mass said, a true benefit. And we are the only stakeholder in the system that receives no benefit. All we want is no harm. We do not draw our water supply, nor does the county. In fact, the City of Stuart has been proactive in seeking other ways to diversify our water supply. And we have our first test well under design and construction to draw our water from the Florida aquifer to aid in our drawing from the superficial aquifer, which we already do now. By 2032, we will draw approximately up to 3 million gallons a day from the Florida aquifer to help diversify our water supply, because I think it should be every municipality's goal to provide for their residents, but also to provide for their residents in a way that does no harm to surrounding communities. So we do support Plan CC. We know that it does need to be optimized in some ways. But is it a truly balanced plan for the City of Stuart and the St. Lucie Estuary? No, because balance is unattainable for us. But as an elected official, we look at the system as a whole, it was clearly the right choice for all of South Florida as a balanced plan. But as John Mayle said, as Congressman Mass said, we have one metric that we're going for: Lake Okeechobee regulatory flows, and getting them to zero. Many other stakeholders had different varying metrics, and a lot of them got those metrics. So we'd really like to see the CC be optimized in a way that would improve. I'd much rather see 60,000 acre feet than 72,000 acre feet. I'd much rather see a 50% reduction regulatory flows, then, you know, I'm sorry, I'd much rather see a 75% reduction in regulatory flows than a 65% reduction in regulatory flows. The South Florida Water Management District showed us that one of the ways to optimize Plant C is to send more water south. The problem is, what they did was they modeled looking at improving benefits for other stakeholders and then figuring out what to do with the water. We really encourage the Corps, when they're optimizing, to figure out and work with the district, figure out how much more water can be sent south if you eliminate Zone F. What other tricks can you do? Can you optimize flows from the lake and prioritize them over flows from the DAA going into the SDAs? Any way possible to send more water south and then take that water that's sent south and allocate those benefits. And we would love to see our friends on the Caloosahatchee receive some of those benefits. But here, my residents would really love to see them too. Because there are some differences if you compare, and Mr. Hogarth will get into that when you compare flows in CC versus flows in Flores 08. One of the main and early battles we fought was just establishing that all flows into the St. Lucie are harmful. In Flores 08, even at a base flow subband, one of the lowest subbands, the Corps could send 200 CFS to the St. Lucie estuary. That was harmful. And yet, to the Caloosahatchee, which won about 1,000 CFS during that time, that flow in Lowers 08, the schedule we're under now, was only 450 CFS. Just one simple switch, give them our 200 CFS. It's beneficial to them and harmful to us. That's the type of stuff that we still need to focus on optimization. But the benefits we're looking for will stay in this game till the end and further beyond. Because I could go on and on about what needs to happen after 2022 and the integrated delivery system. But in the optimization process, we're really looking at the stakeholders that have seen the most harm be allocated as much benefit as we can when we further optimize the system.
Then Hogarth, you want to give us up over here, so you want to do it from there?
I'll
Come
see if
down
it'll work if I go.
Okay.
Yeah, go on slide. Show me see if I can do it.
Again, we're trying to kind of breeze through everybody so we can get, followed by Jackie, Earl Lippish will be next, and then Lee Sanders. It didn't work before, so she may have to-
I can put fresh batteries in.
Yeah, exactly. It's not batteries, it's just, it's advanced. It's not advanced.
Okay.
Also, just I knew that one.
Just say,
Yeah, just go a few slides in. If it's in the video. Yeah, right there. Perfect. Sorry.
So Oars Away, some history here. The reason I put this in a slideshow, most of what I have in here you've already seen from the Army Corps presentation, but what I wanted to kind of illustrate was just some of the changes, what we've seen already in a short amount of time, from what our plan was for the to now. And when you look at kind of what was in that book and that operational guidance, go ahead to the next slide, Laura. You're going to see right here, this was a decision flow chart for the Army Corps for their leadership for the longest time. What we've seen so many lost summers and so much damage to our estuary. It was because if you look right here, the S80 on the far right side, that whole column, those are all the allotments, the maximum allotments to either the Caloosahatchee, west for the 79, 77, or east from 308 and the S80 to us. And as you can see, top down in that whole plan, we're getting discharges. Whether it's dry, whether it's wet, they're coming to us because that plan considered a lot of these discharges to be beneficial. They weren't, and they aren't. And science, everything has kind of illustrated that, and so the Army Corps you know, I don't think they get enough credit for this part, for what they've done with Wilson 2022, for the kernel and believing in kind of this plan. It's transparent, it's transparency, it's involvement, it's inclusion. We were really happy to see a lot of changes, top down culturally, just with what the Army Corps and how they went about this versus previous plans. So this is what came out of Wars 8, and it's important to understand that the amount of modeling and computer analysis, everything else that we had was so limited. I think when we asked Tim Dyson, who's one of the leads, you know, how many models were able to run back in 2008, and they used to be able to get a few models out over a couple of days, these supercomputers pumping these models out. For the initial array analysis, we were able to generate over 120,000 model runs for all of us to start analyzing. I assure you, we didn't necessarily all look at each individual one of those, but there are other techniques. And so just to show you how far even just the science and the mathematics, everything has come to allow us to get to the point where we have a better understanding of the system. So this was very educational. Next slide. And so what I want to do is just a quick side-by-side comparison. They're not equal or even because on the right it goes up to 19 feet elevation, and on the left graph it goes down all the way to 8.5. But if you kind of look generally, the biggest point I want to make here is that Plan CC has a much larger, what you would consider Zone D range. And that's where the majority of the time that this plan would be kind of operating from. That's where commanders in the field, management, staff management, and the district, everybody's working together to pump water where it needs to go, and then more importantly, where it should go. So that band, that big wide D area, which is the gray zone from kind of just under 14 feet all the way up to basically 16, 17 feet, the yellow line, that's the majority of the time spent. And right now in Plan CC, we don't get discharges on the East Coast. And I think it's important to recognize what a drastic change that is from the left side, the Wars 08, where you're getting discharges to us in some degree, some range, all the way down, top down. So it's a big change. Zones E and F are higher in Plan CC. That's just something to think as far as elevation, just a little bit. And then another point, the proposed improvements that you're going to hear from Eve, and you might have already heard from others, we're thinking about making changes and requesting changes to Zone F, which is the very, very bottom in between the green and the purple zone. What we want to do is allow beneficial releases both south into the Caloosahatchee to continue unabated, really provide risk managers and managers in the fields who are actually looking at both risk and benefit, and the colonel and everybody else who will be making decisions well into the future, give them the latitude to decide in that zone if there's a danger this year of really water management shortage or not. So that way, on a case-by-case basis from a forecast perspective, they can continue to discharge and lower that lake when they see that we're gonna have a wet year. And so that's one of the proposed improvements, and by doing that, it's gonna improve performance both for the Caloosahatchee and maybe even for us, and certainly for South Florida, again, more water south. So that's just one very generic example of something that we're trying to illustrate that we were requesting from the Corps to take a look at in some of the next couple of months and the next couple of weeks, really, of modeling and analysis. So that's what we're asking of them. That's what we're asking you to take a look at, and any comments that you provide to the Corps, any understanding you have of the system. This, I think, is a very, very important point to make in the next couple of weeks for the next couple of months, which will, again, determine perhaps the next 10 to 20 years of water management. And, you know, I think with that said, you know, thanking the Army Corps for their process, for being so inclusive of us. We really believe that Plan CC is the best plan, balanced wise across the board. It's not necessarily the best for us, but, you know, as PDT members, we kind of had to give and take just like everybody else, and we were willing to champion this plan because we saw the science, we saw the empirical data, and we also saw the reduction of harm to our estuary. And then, you know, I can't say that without looking back over this room myself and noting that, you know, I've been in this process only a few years. Some people have been here perhaps a few decades, working their tail off to get change. And when I see that, when I think about that, I look around the room, and it just reminds me of how many times I would ask my mom as a kid, you know, what does it take to make change? I was always one of those kids who just wanted to see justice and change. And she said, oh, nothing ever changes, you know, people are always the same. But I look around this room and I see exactly what it takes. exactly what it takes to make change. And I'm proud to be a part of that. And I think what you're seeing here is a visual representation of change. And hopefully most of it is for the better. And I think moving forward, all of us working together, not just in the next couple of months, but beyond that, and it's something that probably should be mentioned, is that there's going to be environmental impact analyses that are going to be happening after that. So if there's something else that's more specific, you and your own particular area of expertise, that's stuff that the Army Corps is going to be considered moving forward as well. So don't leave that out of your mind. Definitely bring that forward. And just like everyone else, I'm here for questions and all that later. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Amy Lamont, my friend from high school. When I think back on high school, there were problems with the river too, but at that time, we just really didn't have as much of a voice. And that is one of the amazing things that has happened, is that we now really have a voice and we have a seat at the table. And as we continue fighting, we need to be proud of that. We need to have if you drink, you need to have a drink in honor of that. If you don't drink, have a water or an orange juice. But please be happy for the progress that has been made for the St. Lucie River, even if she's still ailing, because we are making progress. You have the best people in the state of Florida fighting for you. When Joe Negron left, we never thought we would have someone like Brian Mast who stepped in doing what he's doing. I have never seen better work out of Martin County government. Never. I have never seen better work out of the city of Stuart. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We are fortunate. And then, of course, all of the NGOs up here that have been the wind under our wings, keeping things going forward. I remember when I was in high school with Amy Gallant, who now works for Brian Mast, my mother told me that Mark Perry and his high school class had a funeral for the St. Lucie River. That they had a funeral for the St. Lucie River, and that would have been, what year, Mark?
70.
Oh my gosh, 1970. So that kind of puts things in perspective, that we've been fighting this battle a long time. Our beautiful river is still ailing, but we are bringing her back to life. We are bringing her back to life. And something else you have to be grateful for is how much things have changed. I want you to go back in your mind, not to say anything negative about anybody else, but I want you to go back in your mind and think about what our relationship was with the South Florida Water Management Governing Board about 10 years ago. It wasn't a very friendly one. And I remember myself, I stopped going to the meetings at a certain point because I just felt like I was not heard. My voice was not heard. Would I have ever imagined that a few years later that I would be sitting on the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District? No, I would have never imagined that. And not only someone like me, an activist for the river, former, 2008 was when I got into this with Scottnessville's Point elected official. But there are great people on the governing board, ladies and gentlemen. If you read the biographies of the South Florida Water Management District governing board members, I guarantee you will think they are impressive people. And every single one of those people wants something better than what we have. So you may have heard about 3.5, and it's funny because I noticed that no one, including the congressman, said that 3.5 came from the South Florida Water Management District, okay? So you had those different models that were up there, very confusing. And then what happened is the South Florida Water Management District took one of those models and they adapted it and they called it SR, I thought that was for St. Lucie River, but apparently it wasn't, SR 3.5. And in that iteration, they modeled how different things could be added or taken away. And the goal in that was to adjust for the Caloosahatchee River. That is what the main goal was in there. Unfortunately, it bit us back. I think we have to think in terms that, you know, it's just like if I'm trying on a dress. You know, sometimes I try on a dress and it fits, but it doesn't really look good. You know, and I take that dress off and I say, no, I'm gonna try on a different one. And sometimes I go to the mall or wherever and I might try on any number of dresses and I don't buy any of them because none of them look good. But then finally I go somewhere and I find one that fits, that makes my whole system look better. You know, that's what we're trying to do. We really are. We are trying to make everyone look better. Everything fit better. And I myself, for the South Florida Water Management District meeting, I did not accept 3.5 because I stand with my stakeholders, okay? I will always stand with my stakeholders. But I can tell you that in my heart, I knew that they were trying to do the right thing, okay? They're trying to do the right thing, and the right thing is that everybody looks a little bit better. And it's tough. And so as we move through this next stage, we absolutely should continue to fight for the St. Lucie. However, we need to have empathy for the other parts of the system. And the best way would be to be able to send more water south. That's what needs to happen. It's tough with the consent decree and the limitations, you know, on the pollution that comes through, whether it's from the EAA or if it's from Lake Okeechobee, but those are things that we can work on together. And if we can't do it now, we can do it tomorrow and continuing. So I wanted to quickly kind of mention what was, they called these policy considerations. Policy considerations for the South Florida Water Management District. And I did support these policy considerations. And as far as the rest of my board, just about everybody, I don't know. I watched it all over again. Some of them didn't, I think most everybody supported 3.5. I have to be honest with you. I mean, when you go back and you look at the meeting, I think they supported the heart of 3.5. But it is not something that's going to the core, ladies and gentlemen. It was an exercise. It was me trying on a dress. Do you understand that? It was the South Florida Water Management District trying on a dress. Trying. And so what our board was saying was, good job for trying to look better. And that is what we will continue to do. And so the district, and think of this, compare it to 10 years ago, compare it to 20 years ago, we are making progress. Minimize harmful lake flows. That was never something that was talked about a long time ago, specifically to the St. Lucie, the Caloosahatchee, and Lake Worth Lagoon. Lake Worth Lagoon will probably end up being considered an estuary. It was considered a flood canal in the past. Provide beneficial uses south to the Everglades until the water shortage ban. Ladies and gentlemen, this is unbelievable. This means that you're sending water south almost the whole time. That's good. That's positive. And I think that's the main thing we need to keep pushing for. June, July, and August, turn off the flows to the St. Lucie or the Caloosahatchee. Why? Because there's algae in the lake at that time usually. Did the Army Corps ever think about algae before this time? No! Thank you, Army Corps, for thinking about algae. It's been, think of 2016, algae going out the inlet, the St. Lucie Inlet. Yes, anytime there is algae, there is the option not to release. There are some things in the system now that even if there is algae, they would have had to release. These are big shifts. These are big changes. Defer to the South Florida Water Management District for delivering of water to the stormwater treatment areas and for permit compliant responsibilities. I think what they're saying there is let us take the hit and let us be responsible for the things that they, under the law, are the most responsible for, the consent decree and for getting people water who have permits for water, like people in the Everglades agricultural area. Allow the lake to be in recovery if it's trashed, okay? That would just mean that if the lake ends up being totally obliterated because the schedule has changed to keep it higher, that there's a way to go back and let that lake rest, which would shift things, shift the whole system, I think. At the same time, I'm sure Paul Gray is very happy that we're at least recognizing Lake Okeechobee. This one, provide for water for conservation measures when the lake is getting close to the water shortage band. And I think what this is mostly is that in the past, we don't start taking water shortage measures until we're like, oh my gosh, we're out of water. We need to take water shortage measures. Well, the better time to take water shortage measures is before that. You know what I'm saying? When you start noticing that things are getting lower. So I think your South Florida Water Management District is great. And I am happy to be on that district board. And I know that we have our hearts in the right place. And keep fighting for what you love and empathizing with everybody else. And hopefully, with a little bit of help, we'll end up in the right place.
Okay, last one on this is the samples from Friends of the Everglades. Thank you for being here.
I'll be brief because you've heard a lot, but I just quickly have to say, and I hope I don't embarrass Jackie, that she and I were talking the other day about the long battle that's been waged for this, and she said, do you remember that column you wrote in 1911? And it came in 2011, but it feels like it. Yeah. I'm not going to repeat everything that you all have heard today, but you heard from Mark, I wear two hats. I'm Executive Director of Friends of the Everglades, and I'm also now on the board of the Rivers Coalition. And when I was first appointed to the board, some folks asked, well, is that a conflict of interest? You know, you need to fight for the whole Everglades system in your day job, and on the board, you're fighting for the St. Lucie. And the answer is absolutely not, because what's good for the St. Lucie is good for the whole system, and that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today with LOSM. So to distill all of the complicated information you've heard to a few key points, alternative CC is the best alternative on the table, but it's imperfect. It's highly imperfect. And there are some pressure points. And we got behind alternative CC with some East Coast stakeholders and some West Coast stakeholders, and all along we wanted an enhanced CC. So those enhancements are something we're going to talk about in a few minutes with the Rivers Coalition. We've drafted a position statement that we think can guide those enhancements. And I also just want to point to a couple of pressure points that it's important for the public to stay engaged on. And Colonel Kelly tipped his hand in terms of what he wants to optimize alternative CC for. Number one, the Caloosahatchee receives too much harm still under alternative CC. The St. Lucie receives too much harm still too, because anything above zero is harm, but the Caloosahatchee does deserve some additional relief, so we need to think about that. And the other optimization point he tipped his hand about is optimizing for water supply. We wouldn't agree on that point, but I'll follow up on that in a second. So regarding number one, the Caloosahatchee, our sister estuary, deserves a reduction in harm, just like we do. Do not accomplish that reduction in harm by shifting it from the west coast to the east coast. Accomplish it by sending additional water south. If we don't have additional capacity to bring relief to the Caloosahatchee, then we need to be asking the South Florida Water Management District, why is that? What needs to happen to bring the capacity? And how can we help you make it happen? Regarding number two, optimizing for water supply, Plan CC, Alternative CC, was already the second best plan for water supply. We don't see the need for any additional improvements over that. So let's just draw that line in the sand right now and focus on reducing harm. You've heard a lot about reducing harm today. So that's the gist of what I wanted to say. Please stay engaged. It can grow tiresome, but our voices have truly made a difference. I do want to thank the Army Corps for this now 2-year-long process that's not done yet. You all have been as transparent as I've ever seen you, and I hope that continues. I think it will. And thanks to all the stakeholders who spoke today.
If you want a copy of this Rivers Coalition decision maker that we're about to speak up, raise your hand, and the River Kids will
They
have.
were, yeah, they were being passed out.
The River Kids can pass them out to you. Raise your hand if you want a copy.
And we'll talk about this in a second, but we want to kind of add maybe a little bit of time for question and answers and stuff. And I want to kick it off on discussion wise. We did hear say that, oh, gotta raise your hand high, there it is. Yeah. Over here, guys. Keep them raised. Okay, so we talked about, and you heard that Colonel Kelly is going around and doing kind of town hall meetings and getting this optimization input on those questions we saw on Tim Tavine's talk. So, and I understand from Mayor Matson, that was gonna be on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 27th.
Yep, this coming Tuesday, the 27th, right here, open to the public.
At what time?
2 o'clock.
At 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
So 2 p.m. next Tuesday, the 27th.
Right
is
here.
when Colonel Kelly will be here, and he's making his rounds and looking for this way to optimize. And to understand the schedule that I know you held up, before him was about the Corps is on the schedule right between August 5th and October 14th. We're looking for getting all this optimization and input on the plan. In October, you start putting together a draft NEPA document to go forward into February next year. And then that gets approved and goes through the approved plan, and that gets finalized by November 2022. So just to kind of give you that general overview, between now, August 5th, and kind of in this October 14th, that's the range they're looking at optimizing this, whatever CC plan gets optimized for, that's when we have this opportunity to kind of weigh in and get it going. So the Rivers Coalition's gonna weigh in here. Kim, also on, it was confusing that a lot of times when we saw CC and actually the Perdido analysis here